Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the How to Take Care of Yourself podcast. I'm your friend, Veronica Wolff-Casey, and I am so glad you're here. Today's conversation came from a post I made on Facebook back in February that I didn't expect to land the way that it did. It was simple, but it was honest. I said that I'm not interested in performing wellness anymore, not interested in selling perfection, purity, or one size fits all answers, and definitely not interested in pretending everything is fine when it isn't. Because the truth is, for a lot of people, it isn't fine. They're tired, inflamed, confused, doing everything right, and still not feeling better. And what I've been seeing more and more is that it's not because they're broken, it's because the systems they've been given don't actually know how to meet them where they are. That post sparked a lot of conversations, but one in particular stood out. Sindry reached out and said essentially, yes, this is exactly what I've been seeing too. And then what followed is this conversation. What I know if you listen to this conversation today is that you're going to learn that not all paths are created equal and that the path that you need to choose for yourself is uniquely yours. Let's talk a little bit about Sindry before we get into it. So, Sindry works with primarily older populations, helping people who have been quietly written off by the wellness world rediscover that they still have agency, vitality, and choice. And what's fascinating is that the same themes show up across the board, whether someone is 35 or 75. The questions are the same. What actually works for me? Why isn't this working? And how do I start listening to my body instead of overriding it? We talk about aging, resilience, fear, identity, inflammation, food, and what it really means to experiment your way back to health when nothing seems to fit anymore. This is not a conversation about doing things perfectly. It's a conversation about getting honest enough to do what works. Let's get into it. Hi, Sindri. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here, Veronica. Thank you.
Well, I'm super glad you're here. So, I've told our listeners and viewers a little bit about you, but I would love to hear what you tell people when you tell people who Sindri Cosgrove is.
Oh, well, that's an interesting question because it kind of has evolved over the years, it's like and I guess that's actually who I am, a person who evolves and kind of rides with it. I take whatever comes my way and let's do whatever we can do with it.
Amazing. Amazing. And what do you do now? Like when you tell people, when you're at, God forbid, the dreaded dinner party and someone says, so what do
Oh.
you do? What do you tell them?
I work with seniors mainly, helping them understand that they don't have to live a life of boredom and pain, basically, is what I tell
Oh,
them.
I love that. I love that. They
Yeah.
don't have to live a life of boredom and pain. And
Hmm.
what modalities do you use to do that?
Well, I'm trained in yoga. I am trained in therapeutic yoga. I have some Ayurveda health coaching under my belt. Let's see, some functional movement. I study Qigong. There's some somatic therapy in there. Basically, I grab whatever comes my way that seems like it'll fit because a lot of modalities fit very cohesively together. And you never know which is the avenue that's going to reach your person. So,
Very true.
yeah.
100%. And how long have you been doing this for?
So I did my very first 200-hour yoga teacher training back in 2014, and so I've been growing since then in this avenue, but I've been a student forever. Like my like forever. I took my very first yoga class in college way back in the 19s, and uh, and so probably, I don't know, that's 30, 40 years already. And so we've been chugging along since then. Yeah.
That's amazing. And what made you want to work with seniors?
That's a really interesting question because started out my career, I was working with children. I worked with children. I have a degree in early childhood development. And I, for a long time, was in that field. And then when I decided I needed to take a break and everything else, and after I became a yoga teacher, I was asked to do a chair yoga class. And I was asked to do this chair yoga class because a lot of people were very hesitant to take this class. They didn't want to hurt the old people. They didn't want to, and the old people are very forthright with their information and they didn't want to, they were scared, essentially. And I was not. I was like, "Oh, there's nothing there that can scare me. I've already dealt with, little kids. It can't be any worse than that." But what wound up happening was I realized that everybody has a little bit of an issue that they're coming into class with. So it's not your generic, um, flow yoga class, and you can just run through sun salutations and a little bit off to the side and call that a good class. You really have to kind of teach to whoever is in front of you. And I didn't feel like I knew enough. I didn't feel like I had a good enough handle on what was out there. And so I wound up taking a functional movement course. And then I wound up taking a yoga for seniors course through Duke Integrative Health. So it's a subsidiary of Duke University, but it's not actually through the university. And and I got a really good solid base to grow that from. In the meantime, I realized I love these people. I love these people. I love these people so much, and they're kind of a forgotten demographic. And and people just assume that once you get older, that's kind of the end of it. And it's not. It's really doesn't have to be. I mean, it can be if you want it to be, but it doesn't have to be. And there's a lot of information out there, but it's not really accessible information. And so, it kind of became my mission to draw that all in and create an accessible plan for these people who wanted something different.
That's impressive, Sindri. And my teacher, who also was adamant that I would teach older populations, says that they are actually the most underserved population when it comes to these kind of modalities. They don't get the same access. They don't get the same, let's call it attention that
Uh-huh.
younger populations get. And it's very challenging. So the fact that you made this your work is just really, it's admirable, and it's inspiring, right? To get,
Mhm.
I mean, they're not dead yet, right? Like they still have life in them. Let's give them let's give them some more life to their years, right?
Right.
And hopefully add years
Right.
to their life.
Right. And it that's it exactly. So many of these people are resigned. They're resigned to whatever fate it is that they feel like age has given them. And they've lived their life and whatever comes next. But you know what? Sometimes I meet these people in their mid 50s, this clientele, and that's a lot of life ahead of you to be resigned to whatever it is that is just going to happen to you. And to give somebody autonomy and to give somebody their own sense of worth and purpose back, and and that they can do it. They can affect change in their own body is huge. It's huge for me. And it's so gratifying. And I often will say, I'm not doing anything besides showing you what you can do. And that's exactly it. It's just I'm just a mirror to what their capabilities are.
Absolutely. So this is something I take umbrage with, and I have for a long time, is this idea that you as a human are going to hit some number,
Mhm.
and that's going to mean something, right? Like I
Right.
watch I watch my I've watched my dad struggle with this for 3 decades now, probably 2 decades at least, where he hit 50 and it was like, and now life is over. And I'm like, what are you
Mhm.
talking about? And when you said 55, I'm like, God, I am 51. That's 4 years down the road. And I don't, like, I don't
Uh-uh.
even consider myself middle-aged. So it's like, it's
Yeah.
definitely a mindset. And it sounds like you're out there trying to get people to think about it differently so that they can approach wellness differently.
Right. Yes. Yes. I teach a lot of self-empowerment. I have taken the yoga niyama tenet of svadhyaya to absolute heart, and this idea of self-study is so important. These, it is not. It's not really good to give you over to whatever population to have them tell you who you are. And I have rebelled against that since I was little. And I'm only 4'11", so I had to be really little. So, but it's no, you have to know what you want. You have to name what you want, and then you have to figure out a way to make it possible. Make it possible. Yeah.
And there's something to be said for where your attention goes, your energy will flow. Because if you have it in your mind that at a certain age, let's just say 55, that means you're old, you're all of a sudden going to believe that. You're going to be like, all right, well, I'm 55 now, I'm old. Now that mental patterning is going to bring on the possibility of your body going, well, if that's
Right.
what you think, then that's what we're going to do. And now you've got aches and pains. You're not bothering to shift what you're doing because you're like, well, it's all over. Why should I change my diet or
Mhm.
lifestyle? Why should I go to this yoga class? Why should I try to enrich my life at all? Because I'm old now. What's the point?
Yes. Yes. Leave that for the younger people. Well,
Exactly.
you
That's a
know
young
what?
person's game.
That's a young person's game. Come on. I will say though that I turned 56 this year, and it was like, oh, because I clearly do have more years theoretically behind me than I do ahead of me. But I feel better now than I ever did before. Um, I have better health now than I ever did before. And especially in my 40s and my late 30s and 40s. I mean, I am way healthier now than I ever was then. And it's curiosity to me to wonder why would I let this go now? Why would I just kind of park myself on the couch and just be? I don't, not for me. It's not for me. So, and I completely understand if it is for somebody else, but for me, it's not for me. Yeah.
And I would say I don't know that it is for anybody else. I think there's this certain, is going to sound harsh and whatever, but there's a certain giving up that happens. It's like, a lot of times it's because people haven't found what works. Like they haven't found a you, or they haven't found a
Uh-huh.
me, or they haven't found someone to tell them that there is a different way to do it. And this is actually kind of pulling us around to what started our conversation in the first place. We'll get to in a second, but
Okay.
how a lot of people are told that there's just this one paradigm, like the aging paradigm. Like, okay, you hit 55, now you're downhill slide, like you're all
It's
done, kid.
all
Like,
downhill.
call it over. Like you're all done.
Uh-huh.
But in reality, it's like, just like you said, you turn 56 and you feel better than ever. You've
Yeah.
found this way of thinking, living, breathing, eating, everything that has brought you to the point where you do feel like you have the vitality necessary to successfully live to whatever age. I mean, the ancient
Whatever
rishis
age.
said that 110 is supposed to be where the minimum of where we end up. So
Mm.
technically you're literally middle-aged. Like you hit
Hey,
the middle, kid.
you know what? I like that. I like that philosophy. 110, sign me up.
Right? And
Yeah.
I've had clients that were, in their 80s. I had one client in particular, I'll never forget her. And she was like, I don't know if I want to live much longer. And I was like, why? And she's like, I'm bored. I'm like, honey, that's on you. Like,
Yeah.
You're bored because you aren't doing anything but staying in your apartment and reading books. You're not going out to enrich yourself. You're not participating in anything, and that's part of the problem, which is again why what you do is so important, of bringing that enrichment, to showing them that there's
Uh-huh.
another way to do things.
Yes, yes. And I don't know if it's so much um they want to stay in their apartments, but it's work. It is work to find things out in the outside that are not just quiet and staying in their apartments, because you do have different needs. It is a different season. You have to approach it um from a not from a 20-year-old I'm going to go gung ho get 'em standpoint, but from what your capacity is. But that doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means that it takes a little bit of knowing how to do it.
Right, right, which
Yeah.
is why programs like yours are so important.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
see my mother-in-law and her, I'm gonna call him her special friend. She's a widow, and then met someone later. They're very close, and they're very good friends, and he is super active in the community, and they're in their 80s, and he is like taking classes on comparative religion, and they're going to see the opera in the movie house. And my husband says, like, he isn't sure that his mom would have done all that. She was becoming a little bit of a recluse. So, like, to
Uh-huh.
have him, and he's really committed to the senior center, and I think that's another one of those programs that can be so enriching. But it just speaks to that need of, yeah, it's not as easy as when you were 20, but there are things out there in every
Uh-huh.
community that are available for you to find that different way of being. But you have to be willing to do it,
Right.
right?
Right.
And that can be
Right.
hard. I mean, because some of it for people, it's getting out of their habits.
Right. Right. And it's scary. It's doing new things is scary. And when you come into, say, a yoga class and you've never been in a yoga class in your entire life, and now you're 75 and you don't know what to expect because what you know about yoga is so completely foreign to what you think you could do. It's a leap of faith. But I think it's a gamble that's worth taking, because not all yoga is the same. Not all qigong is the same. Not all of anything is the same. And that's wherein lies the confusion, I think.
And that kind of brings us to the topic of what we were going to talk about today,
Mhm.
how important it is to be finding the things that work for the people and getting
Right.
them to kind of get to that point. And so the reason why Sindri and I are talking today, for our adored viewers and listeners, is because I took a bit of a hiatus from the public sphere. Many of you know that because the podcast stopped for a while, so it was very obvious that I was no longer in the group, and I had left the group chat, so to speak. And then when I decided to come back towards the beginning of February, I posted this on Facebook, and I'm going to paraphrase it. What I posted was, the last few years have changed how I see health, food, yoga, Ayurveda, work, and honestly myself. Some things I believe deeply no longer hold. Some things I resisted turned out to matter more than I wanted to admit. And some systems that promised healing just created more confusion. And then the line that I think got you is, I'm not interested in performing wellness anymore. I'm not here to sell perfection, purity, or one size fits all answers. And I'm definitely not here to pretend everything is fine when it isn't. And so that, I think, is part of what got us in this conversation. And part of what I'm
Yeah.
hearing you talk about your seniors is that, is like, okay, so you're in this body, you're in this stage of life. What do we do now to get you to feeling like you want to feel?
Yeah. And that's a big question, isn't it? It's because it's a very personal question. It requires a little bit of acknowledgement of where you've come from, and what you can, when you acknowledge where you've come from, instead of blaming it, it acknowledges, you have to take that acknowledgement to say, okay, well, this is ground zero. or this is ground one, or whatever, wherever you are in the process. And just be okay with that. And that is a hard thing. Being okay with where you are is a hard, hard thing. And it's vital. It's vital because
Mhm.
otherwise you're just fighting yourself.
You have
Yeah.
to accept where you are to get to where you're going. And I think another part of it, because we are resistant to acknowledging where we are, is that people don't often know where they are because they've
Uh-huh.
been ignoring it for so long. And so I I was watching Grey's Anatomy last night, and there was this line where this one character was dealing with his post-traumatic stress from being in Afghanistan or whatever, or Iraq, something, some war. And he had been resisting it or thinking about it for so long, and he's working with a therapist, and he said, "I feel ashamed." And she said, "Good." And he looked at her like, "How can that be good?" And she said, "Because now you know where you are. And once you
Uh-huh.
know where you are, you can build the map to get to where you want to go. But you can't do that until you know where you are."
Right. Right. And what you're willing to accept and what you're not willing to accept.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what starts to build the map, right?
Yeah.
That starts to build your
Right.
map out. What do you want? And then that's another tough thing, and I don't know if you run into this with your people, but people oftentimes they don't know what they want. They only know what they don't want, which is
Uh-huh.
fine. It's okay
Right.
to know what you don't want. Just flip it then. So if you know you don't want to feel sick, okay, so what does it look like to be healthy?
Right. Right.
Right?
Yeah. And it can't be a distorted view either because life is not all rainbows and sunshine. It really just isn't. And sometimes you wake up with higher energy and sometimes you wake up with lower energy and sometimes you have a stiff shoulder and sometimes you can't lift your arm past here. And you know, you come into the world with things. We wake up every day with things that are going on. And they don't have to be permanent things. They don't have to be
No.
permanent things. And I mean, to be sure, you wake up one day and you have to have a leg amputated or something else. That's a whole different, but then you don't have to have the mindset that you're a victim.
You just touched on it.
Yeah.
This victim mentality that has mm, become a bit of its own pandemic, shall we say, of like, it's so easy to slip into that. And I get it, and there some people have legitimate reasons, but that's exactly what you're saying. And what I think part of why I needed to sit with my own stuff for a while and why I posted what I posted is like we need to take ownership of where we're at and where we want to go, or we'll never get anywhere.
Right. Yeah. 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 And it's hard because, again, we are in a civilization and in a society that feels one way about their aging population. And they are very congratulatory when you have the least amount of energy to do anything, as, oh, look at so and so, they've just got such energy to them. And some of it is said actually with some envy. Even younger people are looking at these older populations, going, the ones who have energy are like, oh, I wish I could be that way now. Well, why can't you? What is holding you back from doing that for yourself?
100%. And there are so many reasons, and one of the bigger reasons I see, and again why I wrote this post, is that I see people trapped in w- these methodologies or these systems, or just even god, like the Instagram influencer trap of what it should look like
Mm,
and what other people look like, instead of the reality, like you said, because not everything is all rainbows and roses. Like that there's a reality that you're coming from, and then there's a reality that there is no one size fits all, which is what we learn so clearly in Ayurveda. And then figuring out then, okay, so what is going to work for me? And you have to be a little willing to experiment.
mhm. Yep. And you have to be willing to be bad at it. And
That's
it's
a tough
it's
one.
really really, really hard to be bad at something because we have been told if you're bad at it, well, then it's not for you. But it's just frustrating. I mean, you would never, ever, ever expect anybody to like wake up one day and just be perfect at anything.
Well, like I think of little kids, like when as they're growing, they're learning to walk. If their first day they take a step, they fall down, and you just looked at them and you were like, well, you're terrible at that. You shouldn't do that anymore. Like, what?
That's
You would
right.
never do that.
Never. You would never do that. And if you know, you offer them some type of food and they push it away first time, you would never not offer that again. You
Although some
just
parents do.
I know. And then
Oh, it
these
drives me crazy.
but then the but then the residual effects of that are maybe not as good as we would want, you know? Resiliency seems to be at an all-time low. And some of that comes from this idea that if you try it one time, or even if the idea sounds, you know, yucky or crappy or whatever it is, then it's just not for you. Well, how do you know? How do you know? And it's
I think
okay
it's
if you try it and it isn't for you. That's okay. But there might still be a benefit in the trying.
well, and give it a real try.
Uh-huh.
Like, don't just like, you know, go outside and discover you don't like gardening one time. Like maybe I don't know, that's a bad example, but like go try it again and again until you're like, nope, I'm really sure I don't like this. And I
Uh-huh.
think what made I got thinking when you were talking about resiliency being in short supply, it was like, I think it's because kids weren't just tossed like our generation, we were tossed outside from sunrise till sunset, and you just had to figure it out. And you drank like people joke, like, yeah, we drank from garden hoses. You
You did?
you would find the kid's family that you could go eat lunch at and not end up having to do chores. Like,
Uh-huh.
and everybody would just end up at the house up the street eating peanut butter jelly sandwiches and like whatever. It didn't matter.
Yeah.
And like, then your mom would either yell or it would be sunset or the street light would go on, whatever your cue was, and you'd run home and have dinner.
Yeah.
And when you got grounded, you had to stay inside and it was the worst. Right? Do you remember you get grounding? You'd be like, oh man, I want to go out and play. But now kids, when you ground them, you throw them outside because that's the punishment. They can't have their devices.
Yeah.
They can't have and I think there's a real clear line from that to where we are now because that started, 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Well, we didn't have
now we
real
have
devices before that.
no,
You know, we
no.
had what? We had Ataris. We had you know, we didn't really
One button,
have
one stick.
yeah.
We have
And a
Pong.
whole group of kids watching, you
Oh
know, the
God, yeah.
ones who got to
Maybe
play.
exactly. Like, and it was like a real, that even in and of itself was a group event because you only had like the one kid up the street that had the Atari. And so everybody would
Right.
be there.
Right.
Right.
Well, and the internet didn't exist and you know, we have a lot of things now that just weren't around when we were growing up. And it's not necessarily bad. It's just it's like anything else. Like
Yeah.
outside from sunrise to sunset may not have been the best way to spend your childhood. But we did it and it wasn't bad. But then again, you know, we might have benefited from hanging around reading a book. you
Well, and
you
I
know
think
what I
a
mean?
lot of us did that too. Like we were
Yeah, yeah,
definitely
yeah.
readers, but we
Well,
were the
I was
last
too.
generation of, right.
Right. But what I'm saying is that it's not all of one thing and all of the other or all of the other. It's not an or situation, but there has to be some kind of balance. And I think we've swung too far the other way.
We've swung too far the other way. I 100% agree. It's like, babies are getting tablets at like, 3 months old. And I'm like, oh, cognitive development. Do you not see what's happening there? Like, let's please take a step back. But yeah, and it comes back to that, right? Always the dosage, right? Like how much
Right.
is good, how much is necessary. And when we bring it back to like the grown-ups in the room, like we are in charge of our own lives now, and we have to look at our dosage of whatever it is we're putting in the body, which comes back to that idea of, can we assess, now that we're old enough to do so, can we assess what's serving us and what's not, and then
Right.
make the shifts that need to happen, even if it's something we've been told is good for you? They used to
Right.
tell everybody to drink milk, but there are some people that that is not a good thing for them.
No. Yeah. Yeah. For some people, it's a very bad thing. And, and it's, I mean, like, I can't have anything to do with wheat. I mean, bread is a wonderful thing if you can digest it. I can't digest it. And so for me, it's not so good.
Well,
Now,
and I would think you're probably dodging a bullet, because now we have a whole a huge few, like many generations of people now that are incredibly metabolically unwell because they're relying on things like bread. So in a way, you dodged a bullet
yeah,
because you don't have to worry about that part. You're not like out at Dunkies getting pastries, right? Like you're
anymore. But until I learned that, I was absolutely that person. And hurt my health. It hurt my belly. It hurt my ability to feel energetic. It hurt a lot of things. And I didn't understand that that was the issue because, everybody does it. Everybody eats bread. Everybody has sandwiches. Well, for me, that doesn't quite work. But I don't know, I was in my young 40s before I figured that out. Yeah.
How did you end up figuring it out? Like, what were your symptoms that came up?
Well,
If you don't mind sharing, you don't have to.
no, I don't mind. I had a pain in my lower abdominal quadrant that I had. I don't know. I think the first time I clocked that pain, I was probably about 22 or 23 years old. And I couldn't figure out what was going on, but it would get worse on certain occasions. It would get not ever better, not enough so that it would go away. It was always there, but it would dial down. And I had gone to so many doctors. I had gone to so many gastroenterologists. I had had my appendix removed because they thought they were looking for endometriosis, but I didn't have that. But since they were in there anyway, it could be my appendix. So let's just take that out. Uh, and like so many different things, and this pain wouldn't go away. And come to find out, like, I wasn't celiac. That was the biggest deal. I was not celiac. So it came down to, I had a friend who had kind of similar symptoms but different, and she was doing her own research and reached out to me, and she said, "Hey, you might want to look at this article that I found. It sounds an awful lot like you." And I did, and it was something called non-celiac gluten intolerance. And so I took this article to my new enterologist, and I said, "What do you think about this?" And she said, "Well, that's an awfully hard lifestyle to live." And I said, You're not in my body. You don't know how much pain I'm in." Like, I had to leave jobs. I had been spending time like camped out because it hurt too much to move. And and so I was like, "Well, I'm willing to try." She said she said it's not going to hurt you if you do that, but but it's a hard lifestyle to live. And I was like, "Okay." And within 10 days, the pain was gone. And within a month, the bloating that I had been dealing with forever had started to like really go down and go away. And so then I got curious, right? Okay, well, what sets it off? What doesn't set it off? What can I eat? What can I not eat? And it started off this whole um, scientific experiment where I was the subject. Because at that point in time, my support system of doctors was really had done nothing for me. And some off the wall little article had done almost everything. And so that's how I wound up in the same boat. And then further down the line, my daughter, the same thing. And now she was a little different because she was born um, and never liked anything touching her belly. Never liked anything touching her belly. So we would have to dress her in dresses that didn't touch her belly. Or if she had pants, they had to sit down really low or whatever. And she just was unhappy. And then somewhere around second or third grade, I realized that she wasn't growing. She had gone a full year and a half and hadn't grown anything. And the doctor said, "Oh, well, you're short. Your husband isn't too tall. I mean, this is probably very normal." And I was like, you get that gut instinct that this is not normal. And so I was like, okay. And then I'm watching her play and I realized, oh, I bet you she has the same issue with gluten that I do. And so over spring break, in her third grade year, I took her off of gluten and spring break. So this is end of March, beginning of April. Her birthday is the beginning of May. And so when we went for that year's checkup, I think we were probably a little late. We were probably beginning of June when we finally went. And she had grown 4 inches. 4 inches just by
Oh my
removing
God.
bread. Yeah. Yeah.
That, all right. So I want to just point out a couple of things. Both doctors' experiences were like, no, no. That's really hard lifestyle for you to live. And no, no, you're just short. Your daughter's going to be short. Like, this
Yeah.
isn't a failure to thrive situation because of malnutrition due to plant toxins.
Yeah.
No, no,
No.
you're
No,
fine.
no.
Like, and the other, so what you said about your doctor saying this is a really hard lifestyle to live. There is a documentary out there called Fat the Documentary, which that, we won't get into that. But the part of it that is interesting is that one of the stories it follows is of these parents who had a child who had type 1 diabetes.
Mm.
And when they said to the doctor, okay, what do we do? They said, your son already has type 1 diabetes. Let him eat whatever he wants and just cover it with insulin.
Excuse me?
Mm-hmm. Because that's a really hard lifestyle
Oh,
to live,
God.
Sindry.
Oh, my goodness. It's better for them to fit in than it is for them to be healthy. I
Because a
have so
cookie
many
or a cake
thoughts.
or a sweet. Oh, this is part of why I've changed my work into metabolic health so drastically, is because like you all right, so you're type 1, or let's even take type 2 diabetics. They're all over the place. Do you know that the
Uh-huh.
recommendations from the American Diabetes Association, so the leading establishment on diabetic health, their guidelines tell you to eat what? They tell you to eat whole grains,
Uh-huh.
eat fruits,
Right.
eat carbohydrates in moderation. But if you're a type 2 diabetic, you have basically a carbohydrate intolerance. You can't tolerate, just like your wheat intolerance, your
Yeah.
gluten intolerance. Like, you had an intolerance to this product, and your
Uh-huh.
doctor was like, no, no. That will be too hard for you, Sindri. You will live a life of sadness if you do this. Like, no. Like, calm
No.
down. 20 years you were in pain. 20 years you were in
Yeah.
pain. They
Yeah.
took out your appendix, for Christ's sake. Like,
I know.
what? I mean, yeah, you
I
don't really
know.
need it, but still, like, I'd like to go out with
I
all the
mean,
things I came in with.
I don't know that I don't need it. They say I don't need it, but but on the other hand, what do they, I don't know
Good
that I
point.
don't. Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
We don't know. Yeah, exactly. And then your poor daughter, your doctor was like, no, no, that's fine. Thank God you had that gut, pun intended, gut instinct, that her gut was not functioning. And
Yeah.
what a difference it made over the course of just a few months. Like, she
Yes,
changed completely.
she did.
Like, oh
She
my
did.
God.
Now, and I wonder too if, because she's, I think, 5'3" now. And I wonder if she was meant to be taller than that or not.
Yeah.
I mean, I do. I wonder about that. It's not any big deal. I mean, she's perfect the way she is now. And she was perfect the way she was then, but she was not feeling well. And she
Right.
didn't like people like touching her belly, and she didn't want to eat. And she didn't, and it wasn't healthy. She wasn't healthy.
No. No.
And that was
And
and that was the bottom line.
that was
Yeah.
about exactly. And that's that. And now let's come out to the macro vision here. I mean, there's no way to know, but hearing your story, hearing about your daughter's story, and hearing that whole like, right, like I posted the other day, like normalize changing your mind when you have new information.
Mhm.
Because people don't do
Yeah.
that very well. They really don't.
No.
And
Change is hard, but it's super
yeah,
necessary. Yeah.
super necessary. It's so super necessary. And in your instance and your daughter's instance, you basically saved your lives. Like you would not, I mean, you would have lived probably
Yeah.
not nearly as long as you might have, and you were kind of miserable. Like who wants to be in pain? And your
Yeah.
poor daughter not being able to have anything on her. That just shows you how much pain she was in.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I will say, it's my quality of life has definitely changed. And that is huge. That is huge. And yeah, you're right. I have no idea how long I would have lived or would not have lived. I have no idea, but I do know that the quality of life changed dramatically. And that is huge. That is
Well, and
huge.
I have to, just educated conjecture here, like y- removing that level of systemic inflammation from your intestines,
Mhm.
that goes so far into changing your body's capacity to deal with everything else
Yeah.
because you don't have that constant irritant going on from those,
Right.
those plant toxins. Like nobody talks about plants being toxic. Like nobody ever wants to say that. But when you think about it, they can't run away to
Mhm.
protect themselves. And when
Well,
you're
that's
working with
true.
wheat, right? And when you're working with things like wheat or any kind of seed grains,
Mhm.
they that's the part of the plant that's supposed to be used to make more of the plant.
Right.
And so there's a lot of toxins there. There's a lot of phytocompounds and toxins that we're actually not so great at digesting. Some people are better than others, absolutely.
Mhm.
But then there's people like yourself, there's people like me where if I eat plants, I get sick. You eat
Yeah.
wheat, you get sick. Like it's what
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah. 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 And I think a lot of us are walking around with lots of inflammation, and we don't really know how or why. Yeah.
100%. And again, that's the mission of my life is to try and help people realize that. But it's an uphill battle because what do people say when you talk about carbohydrates, Sindri? Oh, I
Oh, you
love my
need them.
carbs.
Yep. I couldn't live without
Right?
bread.
Couldn't live without them. Could not have pasta. Couldn't not have my
I
croissant, right? Like people, they get this look in their eyes.
mean, people get very attached to the things that they get attached to. And it forces a change that fundamentally in their minds changes who they are.
Yep.
I'm a person who loves pasta. I am a person who loves bread, croissants, pies, cakes, whatever it is. I am a person who loves whatever it is. And then if
Whatever.
you can't do
Alcohol,
it,
right?
or if you're asked not to do it, you have to come to that on your own. And because it's so hard, I mean, you're likely to rebel against anybody who offers it to you. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Even my little third grader who grew for 4 inches in 2 months, she rebelled. She was like, "Oh no!" I would get phone calls from, "Hey, I just want you to know." They were at the soccer field or whatever, and I just want you to know that there was pizza here, and your daughter had a few slices. And it's like she just snuck a few slices because it's something that she wanted. She wanted to be just like everybody else.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. And at the end of the day, you have to be the one that makes that determination because I'm not living in your body.
Right.
I'm not living in your body, so I don't know how much you're willing to put up with or what you're not willing to put up with. Yeah.
I can hear that you've said this to your daughter.
I
I could hear it. And
said it to myself.
what yeah,
I s
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, there have been times where I've made that determination over the years. I mean, now it's been, 18 years. And there's been times where I've made that determination for myself. And there have been precious few times where I would go and do it again. Yeah.
And it's funny, like, as I have this theory, and you'll tell me if this has been your experience as well, but the
Mhm.
healthier you get, the less pain you're in, and the more the inflammation goes away, the lower your tolerance is for that same pain, illness, or inflammation.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 And just, I mean, because you get tired of being sick and tired. You get really, really exhausted from it. And it's not the same, hey, I could use an extra few hours night's sleep. No, it's this bone weary exhaustion that comes along with this. I can't, why am I not healthy? Why am I walking around with all of this extra stuff on me? What is that about? And so I feel for people who are like that, who have things that they haven't quite figured out how to manage with less pain yet. And that's huge. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a huge thing. It took me 20 years to figure out what to do. And that wasn't the end of my journey. It just was the beginning of my journey, really. But I see people who've been in pain for a very, very long time. And they do. You're afraid to hope. You're afraid to hope that there's a different way. And that's sad.
I also think there's a fear that, like, so say, let's take the carbohydrates, wheat, gluten as an
Mhm.
example. It's like there are people that are afraid if they take that away, they'll lose the last bit of enjoyment they think they have.
Mm. Yes. They
Be-
can't do much else, but they can do this. Yes.
exactly. I might be painful and miserable and tired all the time, but at least I can have a cookie.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was ice cream for me.
Oh, interesting.
That was ice cream for me, but I realized ice cream is very cold and it would make me so cold. Veronica, it would make me so, 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 so cold. And at one point in time, I was like, you know what? I just can't have it because I can't walk around like this because I'm freezing for the rest of my life. So I gave it up, even though it felt like the one thing that I could still have, that I could still do, that gave me some modicum of being like normal, right? Because I could have an ice cream in a dish. Everybody else might have a cone, but I could have it in a dish. Yeah, no. It wasn't good for me. And,
Yeah.
now I let go of it for a few years. I let go of it. Now and again, I can have it, but only under certain situations,
Yeah.
because I'm dealing with something that is completely random. I mean, if I went to go to the doctor and I'd say, oh, hey, I'm really cold all the time. What do you think I should do? And they would never say, oh, hey, give up cold stuff. That just wouldn't even be like in the ballpark of possibilities of what they would say, but it worked for me. It worked. So,
Yeah.
yeah, not all paths are make sense even,
No, because
at
there's
least
no
not
one
in the
size fits
traditional
all.
path, but exactly.
Right, right. There's no one size fits all. Like everybody's I mean, there's some like what is there's I think it's like Free People or something. They often make one size fits most, right? But it's like there is no one size fits all. And some things
Yeah,
are like, because when we talk about elemental theory, fire is hot, water is wet, air is cold, earth is heavy. These are fundamental principles, but people don't see it that way, and how you react to something that's cold, wet, and heavy and how I react to something that's cold, wet, and heavy are going to be very different.
right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And 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 then the repercussions from that are very different too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's that discernment. That's that discernment, and that's that
Mhm.
willingness to change your mind when you have new information, or like we could even change that, normalize changing your mind when you finally understand the information that is coming up for you, or when you finally realize what the signals you're getting mean.
Right. Right. But that requires a little bit of self-reflection. And again, as a society, we are not taught to self-reflect. We are taught to, kind of herd mentality almost, where whatever the majority want to do is what's right. And I don't know that that's useful either. There's a certain situation, or there's a certain scenario where we do need to interact with other people, because we are a communal species. We need to interact with other people. And so therefore we can't be too oddballish in how we react with other people, because there's an aversion piece to it. However, on the other hand, to turn around and make yourself equal or the same or assimilate to whatever your idea of this mentality is, this herd mentality, is really, really silly, because you are stripping away everything that there is about you that is really wonderful and really unique and really um awesome. And to that end, you're turning a blind eye to the things that you could fix to make yourself feel better.
What a great way to put it. You're stripping
Mhm.
away the things that you could do to make yourself better. And that goes back to the ripple effect. So you don't have to try and fix everybody. You just have to fix
Right.
yourself. And when you fix yourself, that will ripple out to the people in your immediate orbit, which then will ripple out to those people. And one by one, we create a better world.
Yeah. I've often said that I work on the bubble, right? And the bubble is just myself, right? So when you pop a bubble expands and expands and expands, but I am the bubble, and I can only do what I can do for myself. And if I make myself a little bit more healthy, and I make myself a little bit more settled in my own skin, and I make myself a little bit happier, well, then that's going to show up in how I show up. And that might brighten somebody else's day, or it might, show somebody else a different way to do something, or it might, you never know what that ripple effect is going to be. However, do you need to? Do you need to? I don't know. That's my thought process. I don't know.
It's very similar to what Ram Dass says about being in relationship, and that the best only thing I can do for you is to work on myself.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Mm.
Do you have anything else you'd like to share with our listeners and our viewers?
Oh, I don't know. I think that, well, you know what? I think we've talked an awful lot about figuring out who you are in not necessarily your place in the world, but who you are, right? And that's a really hard thing to do, because we reflect on the people that we're around. And so sometimes you never feel like you're in place, like always feel like the fish out of water here. Because it was really kind of hard to like lean into the people I was hanging around with and see myself in that scenario. Um, don't be afraid to go outside your pond. Don't be afraid to go outside your pond, because you never know what you'll find out there. And sometimes that still means being in your pond, just going to a different section.
The
Just
ponds
going
can
to
be
a
pretty
different
big.
section. They can be very big. And sometimes it just requires, like, oh, I never knew that about that person. How cool is that? I want to know more, because we all have our outside personas, right? We all bring our outside personas. But the thing of it is our outside personas still have our inside personas along with them. Uh,
It's true. It's totally
yeah,
true. The inside and
yeah,
outside personas are intertwined, you know.
they are. They are. And they can be fascinating, utterly, utterly fascinating in the best possible ways. So when you figure out a little bit of that, then you can figure out what it's going to take for you to have a little bit less pain, a little bit more health, a little bit more vitality. And then, so it doesn't really matter what path you take as long as it's right for you. And I think that's where we started, right? That's kind of
It
where we
is. It
started.
absolutely is. It was
Yeah.
the whole point of this conversation. That's awesome. Well
Yeah.
done.
Yeah. Woo! Yes.
Woo, exactly. Yes. So at the end of the podcast, I always ask people two questions. The first one is the
Mhm.
same question for everyone, and that is,
Okay.
what are you learning from the food that you eat?
What am I learning from the food that I eat that I don't need nearly as much as I think I do? I am
Ooh,
learning that I can be completely starving and fill my plate, and then about halfway through, I can feel satiated and not feel guilty that I put the rest away for later.
that's huge.
Yeah.
That is so big. And that is so true for so many people where, right, we always say your eyes are bigger than your stomach. But part of and that's for so many different reasons. Some people came from
Mhm.
scarcity. Some people feel like, oh, I might not get to eat later. Like there are so many different reasons. But learning that level of satiety tells me that you have also learned a certain level of feeling safe in your body. And that's
Mm,
huge.
that is huge. That is huge. Yeah,
That is
I
huge.
would agree with that. I would agree with that.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. So the second question comes from the Delve deck, no affiliation, but I just love these cards. This is the Joy edition, and I'm just picked a random section and I am shuffling it. I wish I had like suspenseful music to play. Okay. Here is your question, Sindri. What did you love as a kid that you still love as an adult?
Oh, um, cartwheels.
I did not see that
Cartwheels.
coming.
Cartwheels.
Oh my God, you can do I can't do a cartwheel to save my life. I am so impressed right now.
Up until about, I don't know when the last one I did was, but every now and again, even now, I will get this urge when I'm in an open hallway or I'm just like walking through a space that I just want a cartwheel right now. And I will cartwheel. I don't have any idea because I'm not watching myself or filming myself or anything like that, how good of a cartwheel it is anymore, but it feels fun.
That's awesome. I love that. I
Yeah.
know that it's impressive because I can't do a cartwheel to save my life. You could hold a gun to my head and be like, do a cartwheel. And I'd be like, the best I can handle is like a kind of weird, like, am I doing it kind of version? Like, that's it. Oh my gosh. So impressive. So do you also do handstands with some like good skill?
I actually don't do a handstand very well. I can do a headstand easily, but I've had some shoulder stuff go on through the last, I guess, decade. And so a handstand just doesn't happen for me as easily.
Okay.
But that being said, it's not something I've wanted to actually do either. So, but I'm sure if I wanted to do it, I could do it.
Right, right. And a cartwheel, you just kind of move through. You're not
Yeah.
staying.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's kind of just walking through on your hands for a hot second.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Sindri, thank you so much for being here and sharing so generously with our audience. I am so grateful that you were here.
Uh, Veronica, this was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Good. Well, we'll see you next time, Sindri.
All right. Sounds good.
This conversation to me comes back to something very simple, but not easy. You have to be willing to look at what's actually happening to your body and then be willing to respond to it, even if it doesn't match what you've been told is right. Sindri's story is a perfect example of that. 20 years of pain, doctors who couldn't or kind of wouldn't help, and then a completely different path that only revealed itself when she was willing to question the narrative and experiment for herself. That takes courage. It also takes patience and a willingness to be bad at things, to try things, and to change your mind. Because real healing doesn't come from finding the perfect system. It comes from learning how to work with your own system. And if there's one thing I'll take away from this episode, it's this. You are absolutely not broken. And I know I say that all the time, but it's what I hear all the time. People are always telling me that they're broken. You are absolutely not broken. But you might be trying to force your body into a framework that was never built for you in the first place. So start paying attention. Start asking better questions. Start giving yourself permission to do things differently. If this conversation resonated with you, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next. And if you know someone who's been struggling, stuck, or quietly wondering why nothing is working, send this episode to them. You don't have to figure this out alone. If you're ready for deeper support, you can always find me at www.veronicawolff-casey.com. I'm really glad you were here today. I'm really glad you joined us for this episode. And in case no one's told you yet today, I love you. And I'm convinced of your capacity to continue crafting a life worth living. Thank you for being here, and I'll be ready to welcome you into the next episode as soon as you click play. See you later. Bye.